What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. Check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to speak on a recent podcast that I saw where with Ramona Shelburne, and she was breaking down what she thought really happened with Chris Paul and why they really moved to they got him out of LA off the Clippers, right? But before I play the audio, I want to say that I always thought that because Chris Paul was kind of a guy who pushed a lot of, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way throughout his career. Not just people, like his peers, like players, but probably coaches and some front office people, right? A lot of people thought Chris Paul was a jerk and thought he was just really didn't like Chris Paul, which I mean, I guess if you're a grown man, you're not really concerned about what if people like you or not. But the thing is, if you're going to be in a position in that type of position where you're not concerned about being liked, then you have to be in a position where you want to have your own legacy in your hands. Like, so you don't have to have goodwill. You don't have to build like goodwill amongst your peers and management and people around the league. Then you can just go around the league and do dirty, and which I don't think is still not going to work because people going to find a way to get back at you. But at the very least, I think that Chris Paul he should have had thought about him having his legacy in his own hands, because after you go through your career and the people that you step on the way to the top, they're just waiting for this opportunity. And that's what I think it was all about. Like, they were just waiting for an opportunity to get back at Chris Paul, right? And I think this interview that I'm getting ready to play with Ramona Shelburne, and this is on, I think, ESPN LA, and they were talking about Chris Paul and what happened when he was at LA. And they brought him back knowing what kind of personality and what kind of character he was, right? And to me, it just sounds like, although they don't mention it, I'm going to get into it because I just think that it might even been where as though they just set him up, because obviously they didn't care about his legacy. The Clippers don't care about his legacy. The Clippers are not an organization that has like a rich winning tradition. So they're not worried about retiring Chris Paul's jersey and raising his jersey to the Raptors or anything. If they get to the point where as though they can build a championship team, like what they're doing, like what OKC is doing with the kid, with those group of guys that's in OKC, then they could pick somebody out of their new crop to hoist up, right? But Chris Paul, they don't really have any allegiance or loyalty to him. Chris Paul played for like 6 teams or maybe more. I can think of 6 teams like throughout his NBA career. So his fan base is fractured. So there's really no allegiance to Chris Paul, and he don't have any allegiance to them. He had some successful years some good years while he was there, but also he had good years in Phoenix. You know, he was pretty good when he was in OKC. He was pretty good when he was at he's with the Spurs, so he's been around the league. His base is fractured. So if you the way they did Chris Paul, they didn't have to worry about the pushback because Clipper he didn't have a loyal fan base because the Clippers was, he wasn't a lifetime Clipper. So but let me play what Ramona Shelburne and those people said about Chris Paul, and then I'm gonna add my take to it.
I now understand why the Clippers did what they did, and I also see Chris' side of it. Here's what I don't understand. They knew Chris was this guy.
Yeah.
Momo. They knew this. They had him for 5 years. They were surprised that he was vocal and holding people accountable.
They thought he was going to change his approach.
That's the inexcusable thing to me.
Yeah.
That they are now acting like they didn't know they didn't know what they were getting. They knew exactly what they were getting, didn't they?
They did. And
all right, so let me say about this, right? Because a lot of times they're not going to say this, but professional athletes in basketball, and I've seen it happen in football, if you are an athlete that is a diva and you're an athlete that is used to getting your way, and those guys and management and coaching staff and stuff like that, they have to, a lot of times they have to swallow their pride and go along with you for just for temporary gain, because they know that you are the one who has the leverage at that time. And so as soon as they have leverage, they look for these type of opportunities to show you who really is boss. I seen it happen with Terrell Owens. I even seen it happen with Michael Jordan when he was with the Wizards, right? So those, if you're used to getting your way throughout your career, a lot they call it like a wake up call, a Negro wake up call, right? A lot of times that's what they call it, because they want, as soon as they had an opportunity to exert their leverage and their power, then they'll do that. And they didn't care anything about this guy's legacy. They don't care about hanging his jersey or anything like that. So that's why they brought him back, because now they have the leverage.
There's a couple things. They'll say, okay, before he even signed, there were so many meetings where they said, this is going to be your role. You're not going to play very much. Some nights you're going to play, other nights you're not. We want you to be the, kind of show some leadership. You got gravitas, or you're credible.
Right.
It's a great story. And he started 82 games for San Antonio. He's a guy who, like, James Harden's out, he can fill in and run the offense for a game. Okay. That's how they saw him. And this is also, and this is something I wrote, but I think I can say it even more clearly on the radio. When there is a leadership vacuum, someone will fill it. Like, Kawhi Leonard, not really a leader, great player.
Not
James
vocal,
Harden, great
vocal.
player, not vocal.
Yep.
Like, they're not.
See, they're talking about leadership and like his role and all that stuff, and they're going away from, like the fact that what goes around comes around. They're going away from that. They're not talking about like what Chris Paul was like when he was in his prime, like when he was like one of the best point guards in the league. They're not talking about what he did as a young player, rubbing people the wrong way. And the reason why is because they want people to continuously fall into the trap that Chris Paul is falling into. Because if you tell a young player, or if you tell a young person in general, be careful how you treat people while you're on your way up. Because when you're on your way down, or when you're at your lowest, then people will line up to kick you, or they'll line up to push you down because of the way you treated them when you had that leverage, you had that authority. And you're going to see LeBron James going to go through the same thing. Especially professional athletes, because professional athletes, a lot of time, basketball players or football players or whatever, they could be divas, and they could be a nuisance to the people that are around them. But the people, like Luka get on people's nerves, but because Luka has leverage, Luka put butts in the seat. Luka has a certain amount of, he's got leverage. And I said the same thing about LeBron. If you use this opportunity that you have to build bridges, and not really just show people that you have, like, you got leverage and I'll use leverage. You don't want to be like that. You don't want to treat people like that when you have authority. You want to build bridges, because you are not going to always be in a position where as though you can, you could act like a diva and make things happen. And so at the end of these guys' career, this is what happens to them. They so used to getting their way and thinking, oh, I did this much for this team. I did this much for the sport of basketball. I did this much for the sport. The sport owe me this. The sport owe me that. It don't work like that. People are, but nobody's telling young basketball players that life don't work like that. So as much as Chris Paul might have thought he did so much for the organization, the organization owes him this. They don't owe you anything as long as they paid you what they said they was going to pay you. Other than that, they don't owe you anything. They don't have to put a statue up. They don't have to raise his jersey or anything like that. And so, this, like when you at your prime and you at your peak as a professional athlete, that is the time for you to build bridges. So when you go beyond, you advance through the basketball sport, then you have some relationships established, some trust and some respect with people. That's the way, people go to college And at college, they do that. Like when you go to a college, you looking to make lifelong friends. You join people join those fraternities and sororities and stuff like that, looking to establish lifelong relationships. But if you're a professional athlete and you don't look at it like that, like basketball and everybody in that part of that organization is part of that fraternity, and you want to build lifelong relationships. So when you get out of there as a basketball player, then you can go somewhere and coach. You know, you can go somewhere and be a general manager, but he didn't do that. But they're not going to hit on that. They're going to talk about leadership. They're going to talk about, they knew, put him in that victim role, that victim mentality.
Bad leaders, they just don't really do it. That's not their thing. And so when you bring a guy like Chris Paul in, and you know him, he knows you, etc., he's gonna do what Chris Paul. He's gonna try to show leadership. So some of the things early on where he would, like, he invited guys to his suite at the Rams game. And he threw a Halloween party, and then no one came. And after they get worked the first night in Utah, which is this great.
That is the saddest thing.
It was
throwing
really
a Halloween party. And
like three
shows
players.
Up.
I think Brad Beal came and Zubac and like,
that is
and
really
you're like,
sad.
Yeah,
he's trying to build.
If LeBron throws a Halloween party, how many people
Everyone's
do
gonna
you think
be
are
there.
skipping it?
Yeah,
and
they'll
like,
do
think
a
about
live
this.
Yeah, people didn't go, and Chris Paul should have, like, they didn't mess with him like that. They didn't like him. James Harden, he didn't get along with James Harden when they played in Houston together, and Kawhi, probably didn't dig him because he probably was too vocal and too, so, they really didn't like him. And so it should not been a surprise to him, Chris Paul, when something like this happened. Like the first time first time you do something that they don't like, they're going to penalize you for being Chris Paul. And that's what he's been throughout his career. And I think a lot of players, and the same thing is going to happen to all those, especially diva athletes, like even with Kawhi, with him being quiet, like he take advantage of some things that, the fact that he's a professional athlete, and there's been some talk that, he wants special this and special that. James Harden the same way. All those guys at the end of their career, they just, certain people just can't wait to put them back in their place and show them like who's really boss. But nobody talks to, nobody warned these basketball players and these athletes to like try to build relationships throughout your career, man. So then you could advance even once you're not playing anymore. But they didn't really touch on what the real issue is. He just rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And so, Michael Jordan, like when Michael Jordan was at the Bulls, the players from the Chicago Bulls, they used to meet, all those guys used to meet together, but Mike never came. All the other guys, Luke Longley and and Scott Williams and all those guys used to get together and do things and meet at one of the players' house and what was the guy, Purdue and all those guys, they used to get together and hang out and stuff like that. But Mike never came because, number one, Mike was a nuisance to them. They wasn't mad that Mike wasn't there because Mike probably would have got on their nerves and messed up that situation. But yeah, man, that's you got to learn how to not rub people the wrong way. And Chris Paul should have been in charge of his own legacy. So he wouldn't have been in a position where as though somebody like Ty Lue or Lawrence Frank or this guy, that's his name, Lawrence Franks, would have been able to so easily just throw his legacy, or mess his legacy up like that. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, and I'll check you all out during the next episode, on the next video. Peace.